I want to start us off tonight as well with a land acknowledgement in the digital sphere. And this first one is from Adrian Wong of the Spiderweb Show. And it reads, since our activities are shared digitally on the internet, let's also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technology, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We're using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art that we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect indigenous peoples worldwide. And since we're also in real space and time, since many of us are zooming in from Oregon, we're currently seated on the traditional lands of the Multnomah, Catlamet, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. And I invite you to join us in acknowledging all of the above as our shared responsibility to make good use of this time, and for us, each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and accomplish it. We'd also like to share a statement of solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. And this comes from and upon a member and our former colleague, Jairaj Singh. We'd like to acknowledge that our society has deeply rooted within it centuries of white supremacy economies built on the enslavement, the disproportionate imprisonment of Black folks, the violation of human and civil rights, and the concentration of extreme wealth into the hands of a small, mostly white male elite power structure. We explicitly name anti-Blackness as the root of most oppression and racism. We believe this will allow us to be better equipped to dismantle harmful structures and institutions that we are working with and within. And with these acknowledgements, I just hope that we are able to ground ourselves in not only where we are physically, but also where we are socially, politically, and within community and within history, and to really remember and again, acknowledge where we're at this time. So a quick just logistical note as well, as part of our introductions, please be sure to change your name and add your pronouns in your Zoom account. So if you click on participants and more next to your name, you can rename yourself if your name already isn't correct, and please include your pronouns. So that can be, you know, she, her, he, him, they, them, or any other pronoun that you would like to be referred to as. And to just get a sense of who's in the room, I wanted to just do some quick introductions in the chat, since we have a big, pretty sizable group today. But if you just want to put in the chat your name, your pronouns, and what brings you to this event. Why did you just decide to show up tonight? And yeah, what brings you here? So I'll just give a quick moment for folks to type into the chat this little bit of introduction. We have Erica, we have Sabina. Sabina is an artist, one of our artists, so I anticipate that that's a reason why she is here tonight, as is Roshani. As well as Cary.
What about the castle? Howl's Moving Castle.
Howl's Moving Castle. That was really nice. And now we'll watch.
I love Howl's Moving Castle. I've always watched that as a child. It's my passion.
I'm a huge fan of everything Ghibli. Me and my mom just watched The Cat Returns.
Oh my gosh, it's the best.
Let's see, so we have people being here because of Roshani. Hi, Laura and Hannah and Ilario from the Five Oaks Museum. Great. Hi, Mohammed, just wants to learn about the artists. Great. Hi, Jyoti, good to see you. Ali, good to see you virtually as well. Jessica, on Lauren, Cassandra, nice. Hi, Reedy. Nikki and Haley, awesome. Hi, May, fellow Apano member or Apano staff. Hi, Elizabeth. Oh, hey, good to see you here as well. Diane. Perfect. Well, it sounds like lots of folks want to learn and hear about the artists in residence, so you're in the right place. Hi, Salvador. Well, I'll let folks keep writing their introductions in the chat, just to give you a sense of who's in the room with us, and you'll have a bit more time to share also as we go into breakout spaces later. So I wanted to provide a quick introduction and kind of context setting for what is the Orchards of 82nd, what is our artist residency program, what is the East Portland Art and Justice Lab. There's a lot of different terms that we're using. So I'll start off with, in 2018, Apano began work on its Orchards of 82nd art plan. And the Orchards of 82nd is Apano's home on Southeast 82nd and Division, which also includes 48 units of affordable housing. And we worked with artist Roshani Thakore, who is also here tonight, to survey folks in the neighborhood, survey new residents, and really kind of put together a plan that addresses the question of what stories do we want to tell in this new building that Apano is moving into, and this new building that is completely new to the neighborhood. It's a new development, it's a new community. And how do we want to make sure that we mindfully and thoughtfully incorporate art and culture and story into the very fabric of this building itself? So after doing a bunch of interviews and events and working with residents and community members and kind of hearing out what they wanted for this new community and this new building, Roshani put together this art plan that lists out a bunch of different community desires for the Orchards of 82nd, what kinds of art and activities folks in the building wanted to see, and did a lot of really comprehensive work in understanding this site, who has been here before, who is here now, and what can the future of this place be, right? And how can we, again, mindfully make sure to recognize the folks who have lived in this neighborhood for a long time and welcome the new residents of the Orchards of 82nd. So the art plan is an incredible document, also available online. I can share it in the chat later, and really guides our creative place-based work at Apano and at the Orchards of 82nd. So one of the things that came out of the art plan was this East Portland Art and Justice Lab. And it's really an umbrella for the various kinds of arts and cultural activities that can happen at our new space. And really the purpose of the Art and Justice Lab is to create a kind of transformative space that nurtures engagement, leadership, and change agents. By hosting various kinds of art-making activities, festivals, discussions, residencies, events, and more. And to really kind of focus and weave the experiences of Apano, who is a culturally specific grassroots social justice organization, Rose Community Development Corporation, which is the community development corporation that created and invested in the affordable housing at the Orchards of 82nd, and the new tenants living in the affordable housing at our new building. And to weave those experiences together to connect those groups of people to create a unique cultural fabric within the building and kind of within the larger context of East Portland. So the East Portland Art and Justice Lab, again, is an umbrella that holds all kinds of different activities that pair not only art and justice, but also really kind of think about art within a community and place-based context, and think about art again as a relational experience, as a way to connect groups of people. Last year we had a launch party event for the art plan, and the participants at the launch party were able to submit a logo design, and there's a logo design contest. And I believe she's 5, or was 5 at the time, but Mazzy Chu, former star of an online cooking video show called Cooking with Mazzy, drew the winning design for the East Portland Art and Justice Lab logo, which you can see on the bottom underneath the original. So one of the things that also came out of the art plan, in addition to this umbrella, more specifically, was a desire for an artist residency program. And to be able to really invest more deeply in artists and to be able to kind of work very closely with artists in East Portland, but also within the building itself, to develop their own skills, to talk about issues that impact them, and to really kind of get to the heart of some of the most important issues and concerns that folks have in the neighborhood. So the Artist Residency Program, this is its kind of first iteration, our pilot year, we're just starting out, and this program pairs 3 local artists with 3 O82 residents to learn and create new community artworks together. And these artworks are around various social issues, including housing, food justice, education, and public health. Those are kind of the main buckets that we were interested in exploring together. And the artist residence just started in September 2020, and the residencies go through November 2021. And through that, each pair learns about collaboration and research, works with community members, and develops a public art project that, again, is really grounded in East Portland and in O82, and is highly relational. Our ultimate goal at the end of the day is not just to make cool art projects for art's sake, but to really cultivate community resilience and a strong social fabric. Again, this is a wholly new building and a new kind of community center. So how do we do our part to make sure that connections are fostered and that folks feel safe, comfortable, and inspired in living and working in this space? And we want to build pathways to preserve and sustain connections between neighborhood residents. Again, this program is really about the connections that folks make with each other. And art is a way to do that, and also a way to talk about social issues. So we see kind of all of those facets as part of our artist residency program. We want to ensure that our neighborhood is one that folks want to live in, and they can thrive and be creative, and that we support our cultural ecology in East Portland. So without further ado, I want to actually hand it off to our artists in residence, who are going to share a bit more about their work. And with us tonight, we have Roshani Thakore, Felecia Graham, Cary Miga, Myra Aldan, Sabina Haque, and Nikki Acevedo. So we'll be hearing from each pair individually, and Roshani and Felecia, you are up first.
Thank you, Candace. Thanks for the great introduction, and so many faces in this Zoom room. So happy to see everybody, from the art plan launch, from the community members, from staff. And I just want to give a huge, huge thank you to Candace to helping me get here and get all of us here. That's huge. And then the other one is, I think she's hidden, but our tech assistant, Linnea Olson, is a youth organizer at Apano, and she just stepped in at the last minute to help us out. So thank you, Linnea, for helping us out. And so I'm going to share my screen. And so who I'm working with, Felecia Graham, who is here, and she has been battling a cold all week. So she is not going to be speaking. She's going to be off camera. So I'm going to try to represent our project the best as I can. But Felecia, if you do feel inclined, if I'm missing anything, please chime in. So I'll share my screen. Can everybody see me and Felecia? Great.
Yes.
So who are these people? Felecia, Graham, and Roshani. So earlier today, we recorded, Felecia wrote this beautiful poem about her life. And so because she's not feeling well, we recorded it. And so I'm just gonna play it for you.
Hello, it's me. Who am I? I am Felecia Graham, born March 5th, 1988, at 3 pounds and 7 ounces. I survived. Born from a drug-addicted mother who had me 3 months early, I survived. I grew up with family and strangers, in and out of foster homes, shelters, and family rehabs, permanently placed into care at 11. I survived. I've always been nurturing and a caregiver at heart. I was a local babysitter, and I took care of my little brother and my mother's friends' children when they came over. I survived. I decided to get my BA in Family and Consumer Science with a specialization in family studies. I didn't know that I was going to go into birth work, but I always knew I would be helping families because I survived. I am a survivor of child abuse, child molestation, rape, abortion, infant loss, hospital birthing trauma, and DV. I survived. My experiences are what shaped me into who I am today because I survived. Being a Black woman, queer, and a single mother, I survived. I am breaking boundaries, and me being an artist, being able to do this in my own very creative way will help others like myself do the same because I survived. Art has always been an outlet for me since I was a child. I draw, I write, I paint, and design. It has helped me survive. Sometimes I fall off, and sometimes it's hard to pick myself back up. Life is hard and full of obstacles, but in the end, it's up to you to survive. Who am I? Felecia Graham, born March 5th, 1988, standing strong and fighting because I survived.
So yeah, that's a piece from Felecia that she created for this presentation. And so that's a little bit about Felecia, and then this is a little bit about me. I didn't write a poem in time because I don't have the skills as Felecia has, but I can do stuff with images. So I grew up in Atlanta. My parents immigrated from India, and so I was the first kid born in the States, and there weren't that many South Asians in our community, and so there also wasn't that many South Asians present in the art that I would want to be a part of. And I also felt that the art that was present wasn't very accessible to me and my family. And so I eventually moved to New York City, and I went there for school, and I lived in Queens, New York, and did a lot of work as an artist, as a volunteer organizer, and then also as a dancer and a dance teacher. And then I realized that I needed to go to school to get my master's, and I moved to Portland. And I've only been here for about 3.5 years. And so when I think about art, I'm always asking who does not have access to art, because I think about the lived experience that I had growing up in Atlanta. And then how can I include those people? And then as an artist, like, what can art do? I've always just been really asking that question. And so Candace mentioned I was hired as an artist to do the Orchards of 82nd art plan. And what is behind me, I don't know if you can see me, but behind me is the O82 community space that we figured out through this art plan through Community Desires. And there's some people in this room on this picture too. And then some other things that I do. So I do publications. We created a gallery at Orchards of 82nd, which Felecia helped too, through a curatorial committee. And we also did, my first project in the neighborhood was through this mapping and walking project called 82nd and Beyond. And so that was a group tour that I led. So very place-based, very neighborhood, interested in neighborhood and who has access to art. Because in East Portland, there, what I learned through Candace and Apano, how there isn't that much art institutions that are accessible as much as like inner Portland or downtown. And so that's Felecia and me. And then now we're going to talk about how we've come together. So this is Orchards of 82nd. And then down here in this building, this is a brand new building, as Candace mentioned, these are Apano offices. And so this is where, before the pandemic, I spent a lot of my time. We are now working remotely now. But and then this is where Felecia lives. And so we would meet. Jamie introduced us. Jamie's here. Thank you for that. It wouldn't have happened without you. And so we started talking about art and how much we love art. And so I also found out that Felecia is a doula, and we decided to work on some projects together. And so one project that we did is I did an interview series right before COVID started through the Saturday Art Lab program. And then we turned into virtual interviews of the O82 tenants. And so I interviewed Felecia. And so during that time, I also was participating in a conference through my graduate program called Assembly. And so she participated in a project in that. And so our interview was published in that. And then we did a public reading of The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler in June of this year. And so that's Felecia here, and these are all of her friends. And so we did we got to learn how to work together and what our interests were for about like 6 months now. And so now with this residency, it's all formalized. And so we're going, as Michelle Obama told us, we're joining forces, and we're taking the things and the skills, our interests, and putting them together. So accessibility is really important to us. Art in general is really important to us, and care practices, very important to us. And so right now, we started the residency in September, and we're doing a lot of research, and we're having a lot of conversations, and I've been learning a lot of the birth work that Felecia has been doing as a doula. And one thing that we found out was that the infant mortality rates by race and ethnicity in the US, this is from the CDC, and that African Americans have the highest rate. And this is the US, and then this is Oregon, still African American. So I know that's a big thing that we are both interested in. And so we were looking at other artists, and there is this artist in New York City. Her name is Taja Lindley, and she identifies as a doula, a memory worker, an activist, a healer, and an artist. And so she put out this podcast called the Birth Justice Podcast. And so we just listened to, we read about Taja Lindley. We watched one of her videos, and we each listened to an episode. And the podcast takes a close, comprehensive, and creative look at how folks in New York City experience and navigate reproductive oppression and create resilient strategies for their health and their families. And so that reproductive oppression is the bulk of the conversations that I've had with Felecia in experiencing and how she experiences her work and her just personal experiences, as she mentioned in her poem. And so that was one of her influences of research. And another person that we researched, it's an influence to this project, is Shafia Monroe. And Shafia Monroe is a midwife and a doula trainer. And Felecia, I think, knows Shafia, has met her and is in contact with her. And she now has her own consulting business, but she moved here in the 90s and she had a child, and she was unable to find any African-American midwives for her home birth. And so she created this nonprofit, the International Center for Traditional Childbearing, to increase the number of midwives and doulas of color, to empower families, reduce infant and maternal mortality, and bring Black midwives together. So that's just something that she's created, and now she's working independently. And that's been very influential to what's possible in Portland. And so another project is Black Birth Matters. And through the conversations that we've had, we realized there's a need and there's not a support in Southeast. So this would be the Southeast Portland edition. And so we're using the artist residency to formalize the local Black Birth Matters project to have more education and awareness around the experiences of Black mothers and families in Portland. And so the next steps, right now we're conducting interviews. And so we would love to talk to Black and women of color, midwives, and doulas. We just started our interviews with women of color mothers. Thank you, Myra. And we're looking for more. We have a list, but if you know of other people, please let us know. And we want to hear their birth experiences along with their families. So that's a big step in our research. Also, there's a couple of organizations in Northeast Portland that we're going to connect with as well that already work for the African American community, but that location isn't so convenient for people in Southeast, and so we're going to try to connect with them too to learn from their experiences. And then also baby boosters that RoCDC provides as well. And so the next step is going to be, after that, we'll do our interviews. We're going to figure out what is the best medium for our project. I mean, both of us are very ambitious, and we've talked about exhibitions and YouTube channels and all of these things and podcasts. And so when it comes to February, we're going to decide which thing makes the most sense, what form, and it could be multiple. There is that gallery at Orchards of 82nd, and podcasting seems pretty accessible too. So we're going to figure it out. And then in June through September 2021, we're going to art hard. We're going to produce as much as we can, whether it is an exhibition at O82 Gallery. There's gonna be EPALF 2021, and so we're probably gonna do performance or like a poetry reading or something else there. So those are our plans for for our residency. And so we want to hear from you. If you are a Black or woman of color, midwife or doula, we want to hear from you. If you know of any, please let us know. We have a form. This is the bit.ly form, and it's Black Birth Matters Southeast PDX. So I'll put that in the chat, but that's the form, and you can just fill it out and we can contact you. And yeah, Black and women of color mothers to hear their birth experiences along with their families. And thank you for your time. Felecia, does everything sound good? Do you have anything to add? It's okay if you don't.
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Felecia, for being here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Roshani and Felecia. And I know folks might have questions, and please jot them down. We'll have some time for Q&A after everyone's presented. So just let that simmer for a bit. And I'd like to call up Cary and Myra to share a bit about what they're working on.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. So my name is Cary. We also have Myra here.
Hi.
And we wanted to, first of all, give a huge shout out and thank you to our leaders, our mentors, Candace, and while she is an artist in residence, Roshani as well. I have definitely loved working with both of them in the past couple years, and they have certainly brought me up in many ways within the community in terms of activating myself and how I can use my resources to contribute to the community, especially being someone who grew up in East Portland as well. So this is our presentation for the East Portland Art and Justice Lab, and our focus is inequities within the East Portland elementary public school system during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hi.
We wanted to open it up with a little bit to Myra.
Hello, my name is Myra. I currently live in Oregon, but I was raised both in Oregon and California. With plans of completing an original project, I want to specialize in drawing as my medium. I am driven to push myself to reveal my inner strengths and my weaknesses throughout art. As a primary self-taught artist, I deeply value learning new concepts while maintaining a perspective of open-mindedness towards ideas unrevealed. I express mental health, wellness, advocacy through my art and hopes to reflect on my strengths in overcoming adversity in my next upcoming project with the Pano East Portland Art Justice Lab.
Myra, do you have anything else you want to add?
I've been really inspired by art because my grandfather was an artist. He actually impacted young youth children in California of Highland Park. He's actually made so many changes within young children who are, running the streets, doing things, that aren't really good. So I looked up to my grandfather as an inspiration, and I wanted to follow in his steps. He was a very big painter. He helped the churches, communities, and I just want to be able to help the youth as well, but impact them in the right way and lead them into, education, because education is really important for all of us. It's really hard to find a job without having like a master's degree, or you want to become a lawyer or anything in particular. It's very important, and this will inspire others and not only impact everyone around me.
So I wanted to share a little bit about myself. I was born in Fairfax, Virginia in 1994. I'm a musician and I'm a band leader, and my education formally started with Grammy Award-winning trumpeter and educator, Dr. Thayer Memory. And that was when I was around 18 years old. And that was right before I attended Portland State University to study jazz. I grew up playing rock and roll and just hanging out on the streets, me and my friends, just playing our guitars way before anything was formal, way before anything was decided. And I had mentors and educators who believed in me to take it to the next level. They said, "Cary, go to college." And I thought, what are you talking about? People don't go to college for music. They don't chase their dreams and do that. So it was a foreign concept to me. And then they pushed me to do that. And I studied for 4 years at Portland State and got a bachelor's degree in double bass in jazz performance. After completing my own personal recording projects here in the city, I'm always playing with other artists and musicians, artists like Fritz Waugh, artists like Riva DeVito, blossom in the community, many artists that we might be familiar with locally. And I strive to for the artistic documentation and preservation of new and authentic original work. I think more than anything, the documentation of our music and our art is the most important part, as well as creating it, of course. And how can we remain original and authentic to ourselves? It's almost like our due diligence as humans to create art, to create something, and to give back to the world that we were given. Before the pandemic, I worked, believe it or not, for a cruise ship. I was on a cruise ship playing for Holland America in New Zealand and Australia in the South Pacific. And before that, we were working on projects with groups like Sneaker Week PDX, TEDx Mount Hood, Jordan Brand, and Nike for art and music activations, events, and pop-up performances throughout the Portland metropolitan area. And I currently record original music with a country band of mine called Lace and Thorn, and that's been really fun. A small W that we got for Portland is recently I was able to go down to California, and I was asked to audition to play for a live performance with Doja Cat for her European VMA Awards. There was 21 people auditioning. I did not get chosen to go on to the next round. However, it was really exciting to kind of break that third wall within our community, growing up as a first generation person. And when you can finally see what's on the other side, that thing that we always dream about, whether you wanted to play for the NFL or you wanted to play music for Adele or whoever it is, to see that third wall being breaking down. So it was really exciting for me. And I wanted to share that too, only because I know that sometimes we don't have people to encourage us to chase our dreams or to do that thing that we thought was so crazy to do. So I encourage everyone to do that. And that's part of our presentation as well.
What are the inequalities within the East Portland elementary school systems during the COVID-19 pandemic? Availability of technology. Do kids have access to iPads, tablets, desks, chargers, and the correct programs to attend school online. Academic support from teachers and peers. Will students have the wraparound support system they need from educators and classmates? Equitic parental support and mental physical health. Are children receiving the care they need from their guardians at home? This is very important because, you know, since children are not in school anymore, this is very important. They don't have, you know, one-on-one teachers. They don't have, you know, their parents are working sometimes and they don't have time to be with their children. So they're home and they don't have that one-on-one, you know what I mean? Sometimes kids have, you know, mental health that really doesn't, you know, help them focus. It's really, really difficult, and I feel like this is very important.
Another important topic we want to bring up is availability of technology for students to use from schools. An issue Myra brought up was that sometimes children may not have access to this technology, and it's nobody's fault. It's not even necessarily the school's fault that they may not have technology to give out to students. Some of us grew up having access to computers in the computer lab and being able to rent things from the library. And then some of us remember not having access to these things, or these things being slowly stripped away growing up. Whether you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, you may have seen both. And it's something we want to talk about, especially right now as students are staying home for education. Do they have access to iPads? Do they have access to tablets? Do they have access to computers? Do they have access to phones? Yes, they do. Everybody has a phone. We all know that. Kids have phones earlier than today. It's unbelievable. Do they have chargers? And do they have access to electricity? This may seem like a staple, hopefully in most of our homes. However, a reality is that not all of us may have secure electricity all the times during the month. And it's a reality that we need to check into and raise awareness for, that maybe there are some children unrepresented in the Southeast community that may not have access to electricity, meaning they don't have access to charge their devices, meaning they don't have access to online school. With this kind of almost trickle down effect, it can happen really quickly. And we just want to raise that conversation. Programs and software. While we're all here tonight, navigating Zoom, navigating FaceTime, navigating emails, navigating text messages, these are just things that are going to weigh down children. And we want to open up that conversation. Are kids having all these programs and software? Is everything up to date? Because we've all been there opening our Zoom or whatever it is, 9 in the morning, and your computer's not up to date. It needs to restart. Then you're late. These things, while they can slide here and there, we want to ensure that we're asking those questions for our children in the East Portland community. Do they have everything they need? An important question: what to do when a student does not have access to this technology?
Academic support from teachers and students wrapped around support, focused attention during class, dialogue between students, and creative energy. Wrapped around support. So when I think about wrapped around support, I think that we need, you know, there has to be some way of being around your child when they have a hard time. You know, mental health really kind of impacts the child. And I feel like maybe there could be, you know, your parent being there to help you through something tough times, and it will help them get through it. Because, you know, children, we all suffer from mental illness. But creative energy as well, it takes a lot to focus, to read things, and not just be like, okay, I want to go outside. You can't really go outside. You're always staying home, and it really weighs down on you, and it's tough. And the focused attention during class, you know, sometimes there's bullies. Sometimes you don't want to look forward to going to school. And it really, really impacts somebody.
On the note of impacting our children, we want to ask the question about adequate mental and physical health support from teachers and guardians. We want to use the term guardians as well, in addition to parents, Sometimes children may not have certain parents or parents at all, and we are hoping that they have guardians. So we want to be inclusive of both terms. Parental care and supervision during COVID-19. I think this is important to ask the question of the community, meaning if a child is going to school at home through online, perhaps their parents or guardians still have to go to work, whether that's public transportation or driving there. Do they have supervision at home? Do they have someone who can help facilitate the process of logging into the computer, using the phone, sending emails, coordinating with their classmates as well as their teachers? Yes, kids are tech savvy, but it's quite an unnecessary burden to add on to them if they don't have adult supervision. We want to just open that conversation up. Emotional, mental, physical support at home. These are topics that we typically don't address, I think, within the community of children. Typically, we're focusing on athletics, art, music, things like that, just getting students through. The burden of COVID-19, which we all have felt, is very real and palpable, and it must be addressed, especially with our children. It's affecting them negatively, and it's just something that we need to have more awareness for. And physical activity, are our kids exercising at this time? This combined usage of computers and phones is realistically weighing down these kids. And we also want to check in, are they still getting outside? Of course, physically distancing. And just overall mental health awareness during COVID-19, because we've all felt the strain of not being able to see our family, friends, potentially loved ones, if they're across the country or across the state, wherever they are. And especially today, is Governor Kate Brown has released the new 4-week semi-full lockdown. Will children be getting the care they need during this time?
Other factors. Equitable access during COVID-19. Will students receive equitable access to opportunities and resources, especially those who have been previously included and marginalized? Student representation. How will disabled, BIPOC, non-binary, first-generation immigrant, non-English speaking, and low-income students be represented during online classes? Parent-student mental health dialogue. What is the parent and student dialogue like about mental health during COVID-19 pandemic? Is it even being had?
Something we also wanted to address for our presentation is equity in the East Portland school systems during COVID-19. An example being, let's say there are several families within the Reynolds School District or the David Douglas School District. Both families identify as, let's say, middle to lower class income. One family just so happens to work for Apple, so they have a discount and they have access to plenty of computers, iPads, iPhones. They get it at a discount. It's reasonable, it's within their budget, and they have it in their homes. There's another family that doesn't maybe quite have the tech savvy information to have so much access to this technology. We want to have equitable representation where if a family is having computers and iPads at home, a school would have the wherewithal and open the conversation with these families and disperse computers to families in need, accurately distributing this technology in an equitable manner within the community. And student representation. This one is super huge for me. If I can speak candidly, growing up in East Portland, going to David Douglas High School, being the largest high school in Oregon and the most diverse high school in Oregon, with, gosh, what was it? When I graduated in 2012, I think we had more than 70 different languages being spoken at the school. And our school was very, at least in my mind, very effective at representing students with disabilities, meeting ADA codes and being accommodating, representing students who are low income. As a low income student myself, growing up on food stamps, I feel that it's very important to open that conversation up and make sure, or at least ask the questions, are our students who are low income being represented online through COVID, or they're not being passively bullied by the lack of certain things at home? and especially for immigrant and first-generation children and families. My mother came here from Saigon in 1976, and I'm a first-generation student and American here. My mother came here not speaking English. Her family did not, and they learned how to speak English. And so it kind of opens your eyes to what some families have went through and what they're still going through now, and to just, again, raise awareness within our community. Non-English speaking families, this always kind of bugs me, you know, when you meet families or individuals who might see a family not speaking English and then gravitate towards the most common response, which is that they don't understand, they are less intelligent, things of this nature. I'm sure you can relate. When this family might speak more languages than you'll ever speak, they just don't happen to speak English quite yet. And that also hits home because my mother came here as a non-English speaker as well. Non-binary students, if there are students who are non-binary, who are gender fluid, who are queer at a young age, who are identifying in their own and unique way, we need to represent them. We need to make sure that we are addressing their needs and making them feel welcome and represented online during COVID-19. And of course, our BIPOC community, Black and Indigenous and POC individuals, we must represent them through whether or not it's text that's BIPOC written text, that is material written from the Indigenous standpoint, that is material written from the POC standpoint concerning history, war specifically. How are we providing materials for our students that is BIPOC representation? And how will our schools proactively represent our students?
Take it away, Cary.
Parent and student mental health dialogue. Just asking the questions about guardian and student relationship. Is it, first of all, safe to talk about? Is it, first of all, safe to have this conversation? And also cultural consideration, being aware that some cultures may not have varying lengths of value for mental health, and we need to be culturally aware and sensitive. And of course, the stress burden of the pandemic, lack of companionship and peer interaction. I know it's been hard on me not being able to see my friends and play music, the thing I've been doing for 13 years. I can't imagine what it's like for a child not to go outside and play with their friends and hang out. So we ask, what can our impact be with the East Portland Art and Justice Lab? And what are your needs as part of the community? We have our emails coming up, and we encourage you to email us and talk to us and follow up with us for any way that you'd like to be engaged with us, and how we can be engaged with you, what we can learn from you, and how we can incorporate and work together. And introducing our project at the end, Myra and I would like to call it OK Computer. It is our East Portland Art and Justice Lab project, a children's book dedicated to the students of East Portland public school systems who have shown great resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic, and their lives, which have changed from being outside to staying at home schooling, and the reality of it. I chose some books that were really inspiring to me, some children's books that I've read this past year. Julian is a Mermaid, a book about a young child who thinks that dressing like a mermaid is so beautiful, and he's growing up in New York, he's growing up in the Bronx, and all of his family support him and they love it, and they dress this way, and it's such a beautiful book. Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, a classic, can't go wrong. And Sulwe by the incredible activist, writer, actor Lupita Nyong'o, a very important and beautiful book that came out, I believe, in 2020, which I encourage you all to read and have inspired us into creating our children's book.
Thank you. We'd love any questions or feedback. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you guys so much for being here and listening, and to our team members before us and after us.
Yay!
Yay! Feel free to clap in the reactions. I like to use them. Thank you, Cary and Myra. It looks like you got some love and resonance in the chat, so lots of folks to follow up with potentially. And I'd like to bring up our final artist pair, Sabina and Nikki. Go for it.
Hi, folks. Sabina here, and I'm going to be sharing the slides in 1 minute. So Nikki is going to start presenting, and let's start, Nikki.
Good evening, everyone. As she stated, my name is Nikki Acevedo, and I'm a resident artist from Orchards of 82nd. And I first just want to take this moment to thank all the artists and the residents who presented, and I wanted to give a very special thank you to Apano and Candace for highlighting that whole Black Lives Matter movement. I feel like as a young Black woman, I can't tell you how good it felt to hear you highlight that and to just feel supported by my community in that way. So thank you. But back to the topic at hand. Since September, I've been working with my wonderful and inspirational mentor, Sabina Haque, on this artist residency program. And I'm really, really proud to present the work and research we've collected so far. So I present to you our project titled Forgotten Birds, which focuses on family separations at the US-Mexico border. And Sabina is going to tell us a little bit of background about herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sabina Haque. This painting, actually, it's an etching that I made a couple of years ago, and it's showing my grandmother and my father leaving India during 1947, almost 70 years ago to date. And you can see that this was one of the last times my father ever traveled to India. In fact, he was only 10 years old when he left, and he has never come back. My work explores migration and stories of belonging. I've been working in Portland for the last 14 years, and I was raised in Pakistan, Karachi, the largest city with 22 million people. And I left my home there when I was a young woman to go to art school in America. And my parents still live there, including my white American mother from Ohio that sent in her ballot via DHL. And then to my house, I couriered it to Ohio by registered mail, and she voted across to the board for Democrats. So I'm really proud of her. She canceled out her brother's vote. So I live in this very cross-cultural space. My father, as you know, was born in India, and I now live and am married to an Indian man from Bombay, and we have 3 generations living in one house, my mother-in-law and my 2 children who are 10 and 14, and they are studying Japanese at a local public school online every day on the computer. They have more Zoom meetings than me every day and every week. So this has been a really interesting time for us all. So I'm going to introduce Nikki's slide. Nikki, go ahead.
Thank you, Sabina. So like I stated earlier, Nikki Acevedo, I'm a proud daughter of a strong and resilient Mexican immigrant mother and an African-American working class man. I'm actually a Los Angeles native, but I have lived in Portland for the past 15 years and in Southeast Portland for the past 2 years. I've recently received my communications degree at Portland State University, but I believe that that social justice reform through creative arts is my true calling. I'm very passionate about healing my community through civic engagement and spreading cultural awareness. And I also think that being raised in a very diverse area, like I said, LA, South Central Los Angeles to be exact, with little to no resources and lots of suffering and not many organizations willing to help. That's what makes me incredibly grateful for this organization and their focus on supporting the underrepresented. But I was taught to embrace not only my own heritage, but the heritage and culture of those around me. And I think that's what we all need in this day and time. So next, I will hand it over to Sabina, who will be introducing the social justice issue that's the foundation behind our project.
Yes, Nikki and I were really struck by the family separations at the US-Mexico border that have been happening for the last 4 years. And when we were researching, we realized that last year, the separations peaked at 300,000 families were separated and were held longer. 40% of those children were held longer than the 72-hour limit. So this became a place that we wanted to bring remembrance to and healing around this traumatic issue. So Nikki's going to talk about our goals for this project.
So we came up with 3 goals. The first goal that we came up with was to raise awareness and to give voice to border separations and ICE deportations that are having a highly traumatic impact on families. And the way that we chose to do that is by using multimedia sound and art altars using the symbols of cages, cranes, ribbons with messages of reunification, placed at Orchards of 82nd during the 2021 EPALF. One other idea for outdoor sites would be like the Orchards courtyard. And we feel like these sort of installations can create greater access to public artworks during the COVID era. And so Sabina will talk a little bit more about the inspiration behind our project.
So one of the things that Nikki and I found was, and one of the symbols that we'll be using as inspiration is the forgotten songs. We have the Forgotten Birds title, but we took this by the artist Michael Thomas. He created an art installation in Australia with 110 empty bird cages suspended in the air, symbolizing the 50s birds that once lived in central Sydney before colonization, before urbanization. And you can hear some of the sounds of the birds as they disappear. These are the sounds that they were playing. We're hoping to incorporate sound in our installation at 82nd at EPALF, and we're gonna move to the next slide. And Nikki's gonna talk a little bit about how we envision our work in terms of art altars and inspiration.
Yeah, so one of our inspirations, like Sabina mentioned, is art altars, which we got from Dia de los Muertos, which is Spanish for the Day of the Dead. It's a sacred 2-day celebration that starts November 1st and ends November 2nd. And it provides the opportunity to commemorate and to celebrate the lives of family and the loved ones who have passed on. I think it's important to distinguish that it's a day of celebration rather than mourning. And so the altars are a space of healing to connect with our loved ones. And an important element of these altars are offerings or ofrendas that are placed in hopes of drawing the departed loved ones to come and be a part of the celebration. Other ofrendas include favorite foods of our loved ones and specific interests that they had, like their favorite sports jersey or baseball cap, or even their favorite cereal or music album. You can also place candles, photos, sugar skulls, and marigold flowers that are said to lead the path to the altar. But really, the most important takeaway from these altars and the purpose behind them is the act of remembering. It's really important in Mexican culture to not only remember where you came from, but to remember your loved ones and those who have passed on and never forget.
Yeah, and in conjunction with that, we looked at one of the artists, Lynn Yarn, that was represented last year in the Portland Biennial. Lynn Yarn is actually an artist from the AMP, from East Portland's. Her work is featured in the building at Orchards of 82nd. And she created this float or like altar space with pictures of living history of the Japanese American community. Lynn Yarn is a first-generation Japanese American, also has Chinese heritage, but these are images at the bottom here from folks that were interned in the Japanese camps, the internment camps, and then these are pictures of lives in the 70s and 80s. And she also embedded a video animation in her piece. So these were some of our research that we've been looking at, including Vanessa Renwick's work that was also featured in the biennial. And it shows it shows an altar space with commemorating and remembering the six, since that time, more than 6 children have passed away in detention. And she created this installation, You Remember, You Forget. We also have been looking at a group called In Plain Sight, a group of artists that collaborated and created 80 different installations in the sky right above ice facilities across the United States with different messages, free them all, ice will melt. And then they also created a really interesting phone line where they have, and Nikki's gonna tell us a little bit about that and the recordings that you're gonna hear on that phone line.
Yeah, so next we'll play a short audio from a hotline that Sabina found in her research, and it actually transcribes real letters that are currently being written to and from people in ICE detention centers.
Yeah, so this is somebody writing a letter to somebody that is already in detention, and this is their experience.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Espero que bien. Our hearts are with you, and I hope you'll be free to live a good and happy life. My family was also in a camp detention center for 3 years during World War II. They did not tell me about it, but I learned that our whole community, Japanese Americans, were in camps because the U.S. thought they were the enemy. We are not, and you are not, the enemy. It was hard for my grandparents who came to the U.S. as immigrants, but we survived. Today, we want to speak out for people being treated unfairly. And not let this government imprison you or others who just want a better life. You deserve a better life, and we will work hard to change this country and stop the hate. This is a country of all people, all immigrants. Keep hoping and fighting.
And this image we felt speaks volumes because it's so easy for people to get riled up for a short moment. But it's amazing how quick we are to forget and move on with our lives while other people are being prohibited from living their own. And so our next slide, it goes into our second goal. And what we came up with is we will be collecting and highlighting interviews of Portland folks that have been detained or have been separated from their families. And the way we want to do that is by partnering with Portland's Immigrant Rights Coalition and United Oregon to collect those stories. And Sabina will introduce our final goal.
Yeah, so one of our biggest goals for this project is to really bring about healing and hope to members of our immigrant community. And by gathering their messages of hope and solidarity through workshops, we were thinking about doing an 1,000 crane community workshop with kids, hopefully outdoors in the summertime at Orchards of 82nd Courtyard. And Nikki's going to tell us a little bit about her thought process with that.
Yeah, so traditionally in my research, I found that it was believed that if one folded 1,000 origami cranes, one's wish would come true. And it's also become a symbol of hope and healing during challenging times. And I feel like the cranes also play into the theme of the forgotten birds in Australia, which also translates to 2020 with the forgotten children at the border, unfortunately. I also think that the bird cages that we're going to be making are a literal representation of the cages that humans and children are being held in. And then as far as the practice of origami, I think that it can, through my research, I found that it's very beneficial to our health. Origami helps develop hand-eye coordination, fine motor skills, and mental concentration. And so the use of the hands directly stimulates areas of the brain. And origami is used in various therapeutic settings, including art therapy and in stroke and injury rehabilitation. I think this also ties into Cary and Myra's project with educating our youth and the struggles that go with that due to COVID and children not being in school and not having a lot of mental stimulation or physical activity. So this will give them something that they can do in their free time that can also give them that rewarding feeling of doing something for their community.
And in addition to that, the picture that you see right below it is actually taken from the demilitarized fence between North Korea and South Korea, where there's a tradition of writing messages of hope and then tying them to the fences. And we're hoping during EPALF we can invite people to participate and to write messages and to tie them onto the installations and to the altars that we'll be creating in remembrance of folks that are currently detained. So with that in mind, those are our three goals: giving voice, healing, and creating these projects throughout the year. We wanted to get some feedback on how we can include more voices, specifically individual folks and immigration organizations that you would like to partner with us on this project. We have our emails here. We can take a screenshot or we'll copy them into the chat as well. But we'd love to hear from anyone who would like to participate in the interviews or organizations. Thank you so much for sharing space with us. And Nikki, thank you so much for being such an awesome partner. And thank you all, Roshani, Candice, and Cary, and Myra, and Felecia. Everybody, round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Incredible. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you to all our artists for sharing just some incredible and awe-inspiring work. And y'all have only been at it for a few months now, and it's already just so inspiring and illuminating to kind of see where you're taking your projects. And I'm super honored to be working with all of you in this way as our first inaugural cohort of artists in residence at O82. And I know y'all have been listening attentively throughout the presentations, and I wanted to open up the space for anyone who's here listening, watching, for a bit of Q&A with our artists in residence. If anyone has questions they want to ask or hear more about any aspects of the project or the East Portland Art and Justice Lab. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask us directly, or you can put it in the chat. So I will pause for a second to see if any questions arise. I know it's also a lot of information, and doing this over Zoom is always a little bit more challenging than in person. So I can also kick it off with a few questions that were going through my brain too as I was listening. I'm kind of curious for the artists, what has it been like working during COVID? I know that Cary and Myra, your project talks about COVID specifically. And yeah, I'm sure folks are wondering what it's like to kind of do an on-the-ground project or a site-specific project during a pandemic. So maybe we can start with that. I see some questions popping up in the chat too that we can get to. Does anyone want to answer?
Myra, could you answer for us?
I'm sorry?
Hello. Candice was just asking us, like, how is it to work on a project during the pandemic? Like, what is that experience like, especially working with each other?
It is very stressful, but at the same time, you have to give yourself the confidence and the hope that you can do it, because it's not like how you go in school and you have a teacher that's there to tell you, hey, this is what you have to do. You have to utilize the knowledge and use your tuition in order to do it. You have to impact yourself. You know what I mean? It's really hard, especially at the stay home, you're isolated, you don't have people around you there to impact you, to carry you on, but it's in a computer. Just like how kids are going through in education, they're not, socializing, they don't have their friends to play with. Like our childhood, we get to go play ball outside, play football, be athletic. That is very important, very, very important.
I think it's been really almost fun in a challenging way of how to stay active and authentic through the screen, and that, like I said prior, break that third wall. We're so used to using our computers and screens, and now we have to really strive for originality and authenticity using them. and no longer let them kind of water us down through social media, you know, this kind of topic that I'm sure we've all felt before. So it's really a beautiful challenge, and it's exciting.
Roshani, go ahead, Nikki.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that I feel like it was kind of a blessing and a curse, because it allowed me time to just submerge myself in my research, and I don't have any other distractions because I'm just focused and there's nothing else to do. So I'm just like really focused on this. But at the same time, I was kind of sad because I didn't realize that this was going to be a Zoom meeting. I thought it was going to be in person. So I had already had so many ideas of things that I wanted to present in person. So I kind of had to like dial that back a little bit and just reframe my whole process of thinking to make sure it works with the Zoom meeting. But it wasn't too bad. I liked the isolation.
Sabina, Roshani, anything you want to share on that? Or it also looks like we have some questions coming up in the chat too about, did you feel nervous or excited to participate? If you're experiencing any major barriers or challenges with moving forward, and what community support might look like. So, Sabina, it looks like you're unmuted, so I'll pass it to you.
So I've done a lot of community outreach pre-COVID, and now I'm kind of trying to figure out how the best way to reach community safely. And, you know, I think it's going to be just trial and error. I'm going to have to use the phones, and, you know, reaching out to sometimes immigrant communities is really about developing a trusted friendship. And so we're going to have to reach out to some of the folks I've worked with before and see who they can give, whose names and whose people we can kind of create. So that's definitely going to be a challenge, because typically, like, I can come in person and present and talk to people and build relationships over time. So I'm going to work with existing relationships. But yeah, if anyone has some inroads, I know folks at Unite Oregon, and of course I know folks through Apano. So that's where we're going to start with our Immigrants' Rights Coalition, to gather stories and gather stuff, community input for our project.
Yeah, it seems like there's some questions also coalescing in the chat too, just about community support and also like reaching community at this time. And I'm wondering if Roshani, Cary, or Myra, if you have any thoughts on that to add on.
I think events like these are very helpful. So, yeah, I think what Sabina just said about like existing relationships. I mean, Felecia has a ton of existing relationships. Thank you, Jamie, for coming. And yeah, I think it's just a slower process. It might not be as like, you know, immediate, but given the fact of the time that we do have, I feel like building the relationships or just going that route has been prioritized. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here with you guys. I appreciate you all.
Any final questions that folks want to raise within the group?
Well, Jamie, sorry, Jamie had a question she wrote. I know she's gone, but for the recording, I guess. For the resident artists, the tenants of O82, did you feel nervous or excited to participate in this project?
I felt nervous in the beginning, but then once I like got my idea and I started working with Sabina, I was just super excited and just eager to get the ball rolling.
Felecia?
I wrote a speed reading. Sorry. I thought it was a great idea. We got to meet everybody and talk to them, and we had only 5 minutes per person, right, Candace? that's how we got introduced and paired up. It was quite intriguing.
No, there's a question in the chat too, Cary and Myra too, about engaging families at this time, since it's been pretty hard. Do you have anything you want to share about getting participants and recruiting and outreach with your project? Get radio
Definitely.
ahead.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
honestly, I have 2 children, and I would honestly want to be able to impact them as well. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I personally want my children to strive to be impacted into going through life, trying to get their education. I've already got their scholarship funds for when they decide to go to college to do something, because it's very important. And my aunt, she actually studied to be her own stylist. She does eyebrows. She knows how to do, she's a chiropractor. My family are very educated. I want to be able for them to utilize the knowledge that my family has in order to grasp that information.
Yes, Myra. To go off what she said, I think, you know, working with Myra, we're having such an incredible example for the project that we're doing, and it's really just so grassroots. It's so real. And also to that question, to engaging families within the community, we plan to make flyers and really just, you know, be grassroots with it, posting up flyers, of course, physically distanced with masks to whatever schools will allow us, cautiously broaching that subject where we might post up flyers in elementary schools where we could engage them through email and Zoom, being 100% conscious, especially right now today, as cases are rising. The cases are rising all across the country. So if there's any time to crack down on COVID, it's now. So we still have to even tighten our belt with how we're engaging the community during COVID-19.
And not only that, but I personally went to school because I was a special ed. I suffered from, I had a speech impediment problem. I had a comprehension and reading problem. I wasn't able to spell. And I had to have a one-on-one teacher. And I feel like that's very important for kids who have special education as well. That is very important because kids, you know, if you have ADHD or ADD, you know, you get easily distracted, you know, your mind's on a track, like 100 miles per hour. I'm sorry?
There might have just been some background noise, Myra. Keep going.
But yeah, no, it was really hard for me to pay attention in school. And I could only imagine now that the kids that don't have a one-on-one teacher, it's really, really extremely hard for them. And I feel like that's really important as well.
I was just gonna, Felicia's been putting stuff in the chat, so I just wanted to add some of the stuff that, in response to COVID, how hard it was for her and has been, that she wasn't allowed in the hospital to support clients as a doula, and that social distancing made it hard to provide physical touch to care to mothers, and some hospitals are going back up, but it's still difficult. And she also mentioned about the that our project won't be too hard to put together. Thanks, I'm glad. And the interviews will be mostly done via video chats and maybe done in person. And that Felecia was a little nervous a little bit because she didn't know how she was going to put her concepts into play. And if I thought if she was insane for all of her ideas, I love all your ideas, Felecia.
So many ideas. This group is rich with ideas, which makes it a perfect group for our artist residency. It looks like there's some great commentary in the chat as well, with encouragement to reach out to some community organizations that are in contact with schools. So I'll flag that for you, Cary and Myra. I think I just combined your names. I know that part of the reason why we put this event together in the first place is that it's been a atypical time, to say the least, And a lot of us are used to working in community, right, as artists and cultural workers as well. And we wanted to also offer a space for artists and cultural workers in Portland and Oregon generally to just connect with one another and talk about what does creative practice look like at this time. So we're going to move into breakout spaces in a minute. Are there any like final questions that burning questions that folks want to ask before we transition into that? Cool. So hearing none, we're going to spend the next about 20-ish minutes just in small groups, just like getting to know one another as fellow artists and cultural workers in the community. And so that it's a little easier for everyone, so you have a place to start. I have some questions that folks can start off with once you're in your breakout spaces. So let me just share my screen. And really this is a time to just like get to know your neighbors, you know, in the greater Portland and Oregon area. So you can start off with introductions, your name, pronouns, and kind of how you got here and why you were attracted to this event. And then for discussion, again, what does creative practice look like at this moment? During a pandemic in 2020, right? Like, what has that looked like for you? And creative practices can be so many things, not just kind of your traditional art forms, but any sort of thing that you create, make, generate that nourishes you. Have you sustained your practices during the pandemic? And what kind of support would you like or need at this time to nourish your practices? And what kinds of connections do you see between the practices and experiences and needs of the people in your group? So this is just a time to just seriously get to know each other. I know it can be really hard to do this over Zoom, but we hope that at least a small dose can be helpful and nourishing as fellow artists, cultural workers, and creatively oriented people in this space together. So I think without further ado, you can find the questions in the chat. And then when we come back, we'll do a quick share back. So if you could just nominate someone in your group who would like to share a few takeaways from your conversation, that would be great. And then Linnea, I think you're up to break us out into breakout spaces. Or there may have been people who dropped off during the breakout space. Oh, sorry, Linnea. Did you say something?
I think everyone should be back.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, I hope that you had a fun time just chatting it up with your neighbors in your group. And I just wanted to give us some space to share back anything that came up in your group about your creative practices, about how you're sustaining them during this time. Just give folks a bit of space to share. So I was in breakout room 1, and we talked a lot about just catching up and kind of taking on new creative practices during the pandemic, like trying new things just to like stay motivated and engaged, and like making short films and playing games, kind of really, just doing different things. And we talked a lot about fashion as well, and fashion and aesthetics and being creative with our fashion choices, even if they can only be from like mid-chest upward, which I'm also excited to dive into that as we continue in the Zoom land. I will pass it. Breakout room 2. Does anyone from that group want to share any takeaways or things that you talked about in your group?
Is that me? Breakout room 2?
Yes.
I think it was us. Yeah, where are you? Who else is in here? Okay, I don't know. So we had a couple more people that I don't see anymore. But Erica, are you still there, Erica?
Yeah, she's here.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. So Erica was in our group, and Nina was also there. Yeah, I don't know whether she's still here. And
Yeah.
Nikki, okay, awesome. Yeah, you can turn your camera off. I just can't figure out who's here. But we had some great discussions. One of the things that we talked about was feeling like depleted at the beginning of this year and how we're nourishing ourselves. And I talked about how I started running, which has reduced my blood sugar, and I'm still in the zone, but I'm not as close to the diabetic zone, which is great. And Erica talked about how she's been gardening, and that's been really cathartic, and she had this wonderful harvest. And Nikki was talking about tea, and I'm gonna have to get some tea connections, because I think it's great to do things like summer. Erica and I have a lot of summer outdoor things that we did, but I'm wondering about the winter, which is the hardest months of all, and tea sounds like a great way to nourish oneself. Also, Nina talked a lot about resilience and resistance and art as a form of resistance. Erica was talking about our project and how important it is to keep not forgetting and to reaching out to community members and looking at the historical trauma that is already taking place from the people that have been separated. And we know a family that one of my friends works with, and they might be the first people we connect with and talk to them about their experience, which has affected the child immensely. So we talked a lot about resistance and art practice, and Erica is just got a studio made, so that's fabulous. And she, even though with all these pressures and with kids, and also I think she mentioned there's lots of pressures that we're all under, and she is going to take the first step to get back, and attending this presentation was her first step to inspire her. So I'm really excited that we got to share space with both Nina and with Erica, and that they brought so much to it. So I think that's it. Yeah. You want to add anything, Nikki or Erica or Nina, to what our share was?
I didn't mention this in our share, but I think it's a good thing just to share. We're talking about my anxiety and how I was drinking the teas to kind of help with that and nourish myself. And I think it's important. I started looking at it as just a lot of energy. And I think we think that we are like losing our brains or losing our minds because we're just kind of trapped in this bubble. But I've been trying to redirect that energy and just do different things. And that's definitely helped not feeling so overwhelmed. So just for anybody else who has anxiety.
Totally into that, and all of the plant medicine available to us.
Yeah.
I think group 3 ended up turning into group 4. So group 4, anyone want to share on things that you talked about?
Are we group 4? I'm sorry.
I think it's the last group. I think there was only one other group.
Okay.
Yeah, we're group 4.
Okay, thank you, Myra. I think some things that were nice to touch on was, just meeting Ridi and catching up with Mei Yi, and also I feel really happy to see Myra expressing herself and kind of like, sharing and diving into this content and navigating this world. And it's really exciting for me to see it. And I see how hard she works and how much she processes the information. So it's just really refreshing for me. So shout out to you, Myra. What's up?
Oh, you're on mute, Myra.
Thank you. Are you okay? Sorry, Serenity's choking. Thank you so much.
What?
Because she has she's eating a pineapple. Yeah, so she's okay. Want to say hi? Say hello. Say hi.
Hi, Serenity.
Oh my gosh, too cute. Anyone else from the group want to share? Me says, yes, so many truths and stories were shared in our group, exclamation point, exclamation point. I love it. Well, if y'all feel good, I think that brings us to the end of our event tonight. Thank you everyone for being here and sharing and getting to know your neighbors, and for our artists for sharing their incredible work thus far. I know our group also talked about just being like so blown away and inspired by the work that's being done. And I hope that we can also stay in touch with everyone so you can get to see the progress of this work. I know our goal is to present the work also at our EPALF next year as well, but we can definitely share updates along the way. This is our second event in our East Portland Arts and Literary Festival, so I just want to plug our next event, which will be next Thursday, November 19th. And this is an event in collaboration with our Resilience series. And our next event will be Building Safer Communities, creating community safety agreements and transformative justice practices within community art spaces, with Leah Lakshmi Pietaza Samarsina, who's an incredible activist, artist, and disability justice organizer. And so I totally encourage you to join us for that event on Thursday. It is BIPOC only per our Resilience series. But if there are other events you want to check out within our festival as well, you can go to apano.org/EPALF-2020 and see the full lineup there. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And I hope to see you again soon, and that y'all have a good night. Thanks, everyone.
Huge shout out to Sarika. Oh my goodness.
Thank you, Sarika, as well, our amazing ASL facilitator.
Much.
Interpreter.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Inspiring me too.
And to Candace, and to Roshani. OMG.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
And Roshani and Sabina, I don't know if you remember, we met
opportunity.
before. Roshani and Sabina, we met.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Haike.
Yes.
At the South Asian
Yeah.
festival that Suba put on, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm like, we
Yes,
met, and now I
I
can't remember.
recognize you.
I have kids now, so.
Yeah, I had that installation on the belly with the powder. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful to see you. I mean, it's wonderful to see everyone. Salvador, hi.
I love it. The connection building. It is a true happy hour.
So good to see you.
I know. So good to see everybody.
Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, artists.
Bye.
Nice to
Have a good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.